What's up, folks? It's Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X-Lair to provide you a very deep and insightful critique of the most recent Marvel Cinematic Universe film, Ant-Man. Let's get into it! Alright, let's start off with my general view on the film. Overall, of course I enjoyed the film. It's a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Marvel hasn't let us down yet. They have been able to make even the most obscure properties into the most fantastic and impressive films that have just captivated huge amounts of people throughout the world. And what they're doing is just groundbreaking, and it's changing the landscape of cinema. It's changing the landscape of superhero lore, both in comics and in film. It's doing so much, and really they just keep getting things right. And once again, they have gotten it right with Ant-Man. Ant-Man is an obscure character to those that do not read comics. I mean, obviously to those that do, they know that Ant-Man is actually one of the original Avengers, but was not featured in the original Avengers Phase 1 Cinematic Universe series of films. Marvel finally got this film out. There was a lot of controversy with respect to the production because Edward Wright had originally conceived of the idea before even the Marvel Cinematic Universe had really taken shape and gotten a foothold into the cinematic world. And so, when it finally did, get into full development, this film, Edgar Wright's vision was somewhat in contrast to the Ant-Man that Marvel thought would fit in well within the universe, and so that led to Edgar Wright leaving the film, which left all of us thinking, oh my god, what's going to happen? Is this film going to turn out like crap? Fortunately, they got this director, Peyton Reed, to step in, and he did a great job. It was a very entertaining film. It felt like a film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think it's a good sort of like bookend to the Phase 2 series of films that started with Iron Man 3, continued on with Captain America the Winter Soldier, Thor the Dark World, and of course Avengers 2, Guardians of the Galaxy, and now Ant-Man. The film is a great bridge to the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe going into Phase 3, which is going to start off with Civil War and build up to the Infinity War / Gauntlet, whatever they choose to call it. Ultimately, it is going to be the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. So there's a lot coming, and this film kind of foreshadowed that, and it also helped to establish this new character that obviously is going to play a role in the future, because they don't introduce characters without them having some sort of greater purpose beyond their own film. And so just overall in the execution, in the acting and the storytelling, the film did what it needed to do, and I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy that we once again got an obscure character turned into something pretty fantastic via this beautiful process that Marvel and Disney have engaged in, and I mean, I'm really happy about it. So those are my general thoughts. Now I'm going to get into spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, turn this off, come back later. If you have seen the movie, let's jump into it. Let's talk about the story first. I thought the story was well told. I personally am not an Ant-Man fan from the comic books, so I don't know much about him, but I do know that Hank Pym is pretty much the Ant-Man, and that this Scott Lang is more of a sort of supporting type of Ant-Man, even though I think recently they've been trying to make him more sort of as like the signature Ant-Man character in the recent incarnation in the comic books. But Hank Pym has always sort of been the Ant-Man, and so it was interesting that in this film they chose to make Hank Pym more of a supporting character played by Michael Douglas. It was an interesting choice and it worked. I like the fact that the Michael Douglas Hank Pym character sort of was a bridge to the past that helped to also bring in Howard Stark, Tony Stark's dad, and also Haley Atwell, Agent Carter, into the beginning of the film, but also just connecting this film and this series of characters to the rest of like the cinematic universe backstory. I thought that was excellent. I like the story. I think the story was well told. I think it was a succinct from beginning to end. Like the film was tight enough in its storytelling that it kept me engaged. I wasn't bored. I was constantly sort of wondering what was going to happen next. Obviously, there's this process at the beginning of like getting to know the characters. I mean, there was that period of time of adjustment in the beginning, but once the film took off, and it really took us for like this interesting ride that wound up being something very unique and special in comparison to the other cinematic films. There's something very interesting about shrinking a person and kind of having them in relation to the environment be so small. And so that gives it like this whole extra sort of visual element that is so captivating. I loved it. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. Some of my favorite parts of the story involved obviously the connections to the bigger cinematic world of Marvel. That, I mean, most obviously is, of course, that scene in the middle where Scott Lang needs to steal certain technology from Tony Stark, a warehouse that it turns out actually has now become the new Avengers headquarters that we saw at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron. And so you had Scott Lang going in with his army of ants versus Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie. That unfortunately was spoiled for me prior to watching the film. Like, I found out somehow that he was in the film. It would have been really nice to kind of just have that be a surprise. But that aside, I thought the fight between Mackie and Ant-Man was fantastic. It was so well done, so engaging. I love Scott Lang's ability to just shrink and expand at will, and the amount of power that he has as a tiny creature, because his matter is so condensed. You've got all this energy just packed up in ultimately a punch that can knock a person out, the size of a person. So just the theoretical science behind all of it worked really well and really enhanced the story as well as the action in this particular sequence that really did a lot for me in terms of making this film feel like a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then of course there was a mention of the fact that there's like some guy swinging around shooting webs towards the end, referencing Spider-Man. Super excited about that. And then you had the end credit scenes where you had the very powerful final scene after the end of the credits, where we see the Winter Soldier being found by Anthony Mackie, the Falcon, and Captain America. And so that was just really exciting to see that and sort of have that sort of bridge this film to Captain America: The Civil War that will be coming up soon. Now, as far as the filmmaking goes, there was something really special. Like I've already mentioned, there was something really special about this film with respect to the nature of the story being told and what that could do visually. And Peyton Reed did a really good job of capturing that. I think it was Peyton Reed, but it might have been stuff that was already sort of storyboarded and planned beforehand by Edward Wright. But nonetheless, the sequences in which Ant-Man was shrunk down and he was sort of in different environments and just kind of falling through things and flying through things, like, it was just beautiful. It was beautiful to watch. Like the first scene where he first puts on the suit and then he falls down the crack of a bathroom and then he falls through the various floors of his building. At one point he falls onto like a record player, and then he like falls onto the ground of like this little mini rave that's going on in this like rundown hotel type place that he's living in. Beautiful. So interesting to look at, like, the giant sort of like vinyl disc spinning, and he's like running on it, and then like all the various shoes like stomping and him trying to avoid them, and really exciting stuff, really cool to see. But my favorite part of the film was when Scott Lang shrunk down to subatomic level, and then all of a sudden the film became Interstellar. But a little bit better than Interstellar, I have to admit. Like with Interstellar, it was kind of weird for me, like the whole representation of the fourth dimension, where you had like, I'm not going to get into it, but it was a strange sort of representation that I didn't necessarily buy myself, like as a proper representation. But this one, where he shrunk down to like the subatomic level, and you kind of saw like these subatomic particles and just going down to like just particles that are even, I think, theoretical, like that world, and like how time, it doesn't really exist in that world, and how he might be trapped in it. It just became this like really weird sci-fi like moment in this really great like new part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that kind of had like a, you know, a 2001 kind of feel, like towards the end, just really strange. And then all of a sudden he's back in the world, and like things are back to normal, but like that little pocket of film where the world is just not what we know it to be, and the rules are gone, and the physical rules of reality are gone, and just he's like floating in like this, who knows, like this other like subatomic world. So glad they did that. Really exciting. So there you have it, folks. I mean, if you haven't figured it out already, I really like this film. I thought it was excellent. I thought the execution was great, storytelling, acting, filmmaking, just great. As far as an overall score goes, I'm gonna give it a 9.08. I think it's a really well executed film. It's really engaging. It's everything that you want a Marvel film to be, but it's also got its unique flavor. Lots of really exciting stuff to keep you engaged, surprised, and keep you, of course, wanting more. And that's ultimately what these films are about. It's about telling good stories, and then also branching out with cliffhangers to other stories that are going to come, making us, of course, the audience, want more. And I want more, and so mission accomplished. Well, folks, that is it for this review. Thank you so much for checking out this review, for checking out my other reviews, for checking out my other content. Really appreciate the support. I will continue doing this for as long as I am breathing, actually, so stay tuned for more. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, you have the opportunity to do so right now, in the near future, maybe even in the past, who knows? Time is a funny animal. As always, I like to remind you that if you haven't already and you have the option to put an X in the box, you should, because let's face it, folks, ain't nobody checking me.